Hello and welcome to Journey Lines, the show answering the question, how did they get there? I am so excited to introduce today's guest, Jeff Wanner. Jeff, how are you today?
Oh, I'm wonderful, Kim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's kick it off as normal. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing today, personally, professionally, and holistically.
In that order, or can I bounce around like my ADD is going
However
to do
you
naturally?
feel. Yeah, give it to word vomit.
Yeah. Well, my little girl turns 4 tomorrow. So that's super exciting on the
Happy
personal
birthday.
side. Yeah. No, we're super excited. We're gonna be taking her to Disney. When I say we, I mean my wife is going to a mama bird that one with a friend and another daughter, and do a little mommy daughter trip away that my daughter does not know about until tomorrow afternoon. So I'm expecting that that'll be a
That's a
very
big
big celebration.
surprise.
Yeah. So we're
Oh
super
my.
stoked about that. On the business side, I mean, this time of year in my industry just ends up being a go minute by minute of things that are happening from a production perspective and client maintenance perspective. So it's one of those where there's not really a lot of extra minutes in the
In the
day.
day.
Not a lot of discretionary minutes. But
Uh,
yeah, so it's been good though. We brought on a CRO that I was super excited about. That was kind of a long game play for us that started probably 2 years ago and finally came to fruition about a month ago. So very
cool.
excited about that. As the company evolves, I think that ultimately and as any business, you end up doing everything for a long time until you start finding people that you can build around you that share your vision and cultures and values. And I'm very excited to be bringing him on board.
How exciting. And we actually met because of your business. You are the CEO over at Pair PEO. Do you want to just give the audience a real quick, 2-second overview about what Pair PEO is?
Yeah, I'd say that I think that the most refreshing thing about us is that we try not to, well, I say try not to. We don't push PEO. We actively help people not buy it when it doesn't make sense. We find that I used to be in a direct rep seat in the PEO space where you're trying to pipeline everything and convince yourself why a deal makes sense over and over again, and ignoring the 20 reasons it makes zero sense. So we're kind of the voice of reasons for clients that are interested in PEOs, but don't want to spend a ton of time on a hard sell and really focus on whether or not the math makes sense, the business case makes sense, and help them get to the no quicker instead of spinning their tires in something that's just going to cause frustration.
Cool. Kind of like an objective third party that can really help manage your employment organization, if you will.
Yeah. I think that the PEO industry has a lot of warts on it. And I think that if clients are aware of those warts and still want to move forward, then they can walk into a very productive relationship. But historically, people are buying all of the warm and fuzzies and not being shown the warts. And when they find out about the warts after a big payroll transition, it just feels like a very big hostage relationship. So when I started the company, it was really meant to help people know what they're buying and understand what they're buying and ultimately walking away when it doesn't make any sense.
Well, on behalf of HR professionals everywhere, thanks for preventing us from being held hostage. And with that, I've got your journey line in front of me. I'm so excited to dive in. Maybe start us off. Tell us where we're at in time and space. I see you're making a move. So kick us off. Where are we at?
Yeah. Do you want me to start at the beginning of the journey? Where are we starting?
The
When it
beginning
comes?
of your journey line. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you've got yeah.
Where
Kick
does
us off at
where
the
does this
start.
start? Yeah. Jeff is an Ohio native that branched out to Charlotte, North Carolina about 10 and a half years ago. Um, and I moved down with two buddies that we were planning on, we were in our early 20s doing the whole bachelor thing in a new city. Swiped right on my wife. The first person I met on Tinder was my wife, and the only person I met on Tinder is my wife. So I ruined the boys club
Amazing.
almost immediately. Moved here in January, met my wife in early March.
Real quick.
And you're,
Real
yeah.
short
So
bachelorette life or
so
bachelor life.
definitely, yeah, bait and switched my buddies that we moved down here. One of mine is actually my like technically like a COO to my operation now. He's been with me for 3.5 or 2.5 years. and my other has turned into my fractional CFO. So we still get to be friends, work together, and all the fun things that we envisioned when we moved down here. I just started a relationship whenever they took another 7 or 8 years before they ended up walking down the path. So anyway, that was the journey from Ohio to Charlotte, and when I moved into Charlotte, I know you are from the Carolinas. You understand this ecosystem. It's a lovely place to live, to grow, to put your roots down and raise a family. And I was selling for a value-added resale in the technology space out of Ohio. Very like lovely mom and pop family type of operation that I really felt connected to. And as soon as I moved to Charlotte, became the stepchild that they didn't really want to hear from unless it was revenue related. And so I felt like all of the intrinsic emotional attachment to that job had kind of evaporated overnight. And
Was
knowing
that
that I wanted
job in Ohio? And then
yeah,
you were, oh, okay. So this was before remote work was really a huge thing.
yeah,
So you really did kind of like disconnect a little bit, huh?
yeah. Yeah, so I basically opened up a new office down here for them, and I was 24 at the time, and I was just trying to ingrain myself in the entrepreneurial community here in Charlotte. And then by happenstance, as I was kind of hitting this point where my intrinsic motivation was minimizing, and I was becoming disengaged from kind of all of the relationships that really sold me on that employer. Insperity had found me, so it's a big, global or you know countrywide PEO, Enterprise Corporate America. I had no idea what PEO was, which is 90% of the people that hear that acronym don't know what it is.
Sure.
And then I kind of went apathetically into the interview because I was still kind of like, okay, I'm on an island here by myself. I'm in a new city. I kind of have a ton of autonomy, but just didn't have a ton of connection to my employer at that point, and knew I wanted to kind of branch out my personal brand here in Charlotte, not knowing what ultimately I'd want to create over time. And just happened to take that first interview. And I remember after I started to understand what they did in some rudimentary context, I remember being very excited for the second and third interviews and trying to actually go gain employment. And that was my position into the PEO environment, and understanding that ultimately there's a lot of moving pieces that come into it. There's a lot to learn. And so I maintained that journey with them for 4 years. But really after 2 years of being there, I knew that there was a better way for people to buy what I was trying to sell them. A lot of our industry is being bought for the first time. And when people are buying stuff for the first time, they don't know what to ask. They don't know what kind of concessions are available. And when you can really get on their side of the table and make sure you're coaching them through the process and helping them make a good decision that ultimately you'd make yourself, that feels a heck of a lot more sustainable for my mentality of building my personal brand than just smiling through my teeth and enthusiastically selling something that I didn't believe was a really meaningful fit for the client.
That's so interesting because I feel like, especially maybe early career sales folks, that might be a bit of a gold mine, right? You have a whole swath of potential reach outs or contacts who actually know they need what you're selling, but don't know what they don't know. So I imagine that can be really lucrative, but also maybe a little, to your point, conflicting about helping
Yeah.
those early buyers.
Yeah. And a lot of it comes down to, again, like, you can do one of two things in corporate America. You can put your head in the sand, smile, and say we had the best thing ever and believe that and spew that Kool-Aid everywhere and sleep well at night doing it. Or you can be speculative like I was and say, am I really a good fit here? And what ended up happening was that I would walk in. The typical sales process in the direct sales model for the PEO industry is really a 3-meeting process. It's a lot of value depth, and it's really withholding pricing for as long as possible to make sure you're developing enough of a relationship so they don't basically slam the door in your face when you actually show them a price tag. And I would go into my conversations and basically start talking pricing day one with my audience, because you're getting in a car, you're spending a lot of time with them, and you don't want to waste your time, you don't want to waste their time. And so I'd find myself talking to a prospect that, could be a good fit for Insperity, but knowing that the pricing was going to be way too expensive, I would tell them to go talk to my competition and tell them and kind of coach them through it as a W-2 employee with
Yeah.
Insperity. And I'm like, well, I like doing this. It's not a sales relationship. It's more of a collaboration with clients to get the outcomes that they're ultimately looking for without spinning their wheels on things that don't make sense. And so that was kind of the birthing of the idea. And then I realized I could turn it into a business. And then took me 2 years to creep up to that cliff edge. And my now wife, after our 5 years of Tinder courtship,
I
said,
love that.
she's like, you need to do this now. And I was coming up on 30 years old. So it was March 7th, 2019, when I launched. We were going to be married on June 14th that year. And we were very excited soon to be parents in that journey. So she's like, if you wait on this, we're likely going to have way too much things, anxiety related and financially related, that are going to cause you to just stay inside of this corporate system. And it just came to the point where I'm like, okay, if I do this now, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back and be a W-2 employee somewhere. If it does work out, it's going to provide an outcome that allows me to be autonomous and be dad whenever I want to be dad, and call it quits for the day when I need to be there, and block off my calendar for my daughter's birthday. And so we did the live off of the teacher salary for about 18 months before we were really paying ourselves anything to kind of get the business where it needed to be. And luckily we've accomplished what we set out to financially, and Mama's been able to be Mama and hung up the teaching second graders through Zoom during the pandemic to be a full-time mom, and is absolutely obsessed with that role in our family and what she provides for us. And it's really just turned into the outcome I couldn't have painted a better picture of to this point.
Yeah. What's interesting in your journey line is you kind of have Insperity as a low point, and actually like taking that leap to be a business owner as a low point. Actually how we met. I think I was lamenting about owning a business on LinkedIn, and you randomly reached out and had promised, and I'm seeing them, but had promised better days ahead. So I'm curious about, how that roller coaster was of starting a new journey, starting a new life with a partner and a child, but also like making these big scary leaps, leaving your job, starting a new company, casually on the edge of a pandemic you didn't know about. What was like the first 2 years of your business?
Yeah, I was so excited by the pull plug, like that initial jolt of enthusiasm was rather abundant, and that really kept me in a great headspace through those first 9 months. If you think about like my typical Insperity journey, I mean, really for 4 years, all I was doing was networking, meeting people, understanding their problems, understanding how things fit together, connecting people, a lot like we did, virtually when I first reached out to you. And so, I probably talked about my business to 50 entrepreneurs that I consider friends before I started my business. And the amount of support that was pouring out of them when I pulled that plug gave me immense decision confidence that I was doing the right thing and that I was going to see this through in a super positive way. My biggest lows were really the pandemic. You go from being someone that's out present in front of people all the time to working from home with the newborn and trying to virtually network the best that you can and trying to get the same type of fulfillment out of it was the biggest struggle for me. As you know, being an entrepreneur, you're lonely on an island by yourself and with your own things that can kind of spiral you in a negative direction, and not having the face-to-face interactions that pull me out of that every day was probably the biggest challenge that I've experienced through this journey. And ultimately what ended up happening is it turned into a big accelerant for my industry. It turned into a great win for my company, but at the onset, it turned into a very challenging headspace where I just didn't have that ability to have people in my ecosystem bringing me up every day with the restrictions that were in place.
How have you found? I mean, I think you're a great digital networker at this point. What was some of that journey like getting over that hump of I can't go see my clients? Did it open up your book of business a little bit? Was it harder? I'm just curious.
It just changed what I thought of
Yeah.
what I needed to do from a business development perspective. Because if you're coming into it from an Insperity lens where you're used to these 3 meeting models, like you're really just replicating a version of that that has a little bit more of a collaboration built into it than, big fluffy sales pitch. And so for the first year before the pandemic, that's what I was doing, getting in the car and seeing clients. And then when the pandemic hit and that wasn't an option anymore, I realized that we can have a very collaborative relationship through Zoom. So it basically turned into a way for me to manage a much bigger and broader funnel with zero real diminished returns into the outcomes for clients. So it kind of pivoted what I was expecting is that I don't need to be sitting here in their office convincing them on something. I need to get the points faster. I need to get things through quicker and ultimately make sure that whenever we are coming back and showing something that we're endorsing, it's something that we would do ourselves. And so I'd say that it just changed the way that I could manage pipeline in a very productive way that I thought that was the wrong way of doing it until I realized how much more effective I can be if I'm, in a quarterback position working in a Zoom environment. Now I still sprinkle in a ton of networking. I'm a big personal brand guy. Like I love being around people, up hearing their journeys and where they're at inside of their businesses, way I can support them. Because there's a ton of people that supported me in my transition from Ohio down here, and even more that supported me and brought me up during my transition into entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so I try to pay that forward as much as possible and help people find their traction and not run back to corporate America, if all that. I feel like that's the biggest failure I find is when people, get in and they hit those lulls and then they end up just taking the easy path back to employment. Because I know if they can see it through, that eventually they'll turn themselves into something that they would never go back to corporate America for once they hit a certain point in the business. So I try to make sure that they hit that point as quickly as possible if I can allow for it.
Yeah, something I really appreciate about how you frame starting your business. You talk about the amount of people you pressure tested the idea with, kind of this board of directors for yourself that you were working with, all of the support that you had, how you had to see the pot of gold beyond going back to corporate, because it is kind of sometimes a dark and scary path, speaking from experience. And there's a lot of folks probably in your ICP profile, a lot of HR folks who have gone out independent, starting a new business and didn't get that opportunity to pressure test ideas and are learning how to network and how to sell.
I like
Any
that.
advice for those? How to sales? I got to learn how to sales. Any advice for those folks or thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like there's no one right way to do it. I think that I had a lot of things built into my favor being in like the SMB consulting space as a W-2 employee and being mindful that this was eventually going to be my journey, and then basically give myself 24 months to execute the success of that journey on day one. I don't think many people are sitting on the fence about doing something for 24 months. So
yeah,
I certainly wouldn't tell somebody to wait 24 months, start building everything right now, and then do it. As I certainly should have done this, much sooner than I did. I didn't need to pressure test it and be so anxious about it as much as I was. But I find that, at the end of the day, like you're looking for people that are talking to the same audiences as you, that you can make referrals toward, that they can obviously return those referrals back to you whenever it's appropriate. It creates a much more collaborative room that you're walking into every time. It's not like you're convincing somebody that you're a good person, that you're authentic to what you're saying, and you're not just trying to push some product down their throat. And I find that I've gotten to a spot where like everything in my funnel happens through referral, and it always has. Like I've always just been work the personal brand, work the networking community, and work the entrepreneurial community as much as I possibly can. And eventually this acronym is going to come up in those ecosystems. The PEO acronym obviously isn't coming up every single day, but when it does, it's a natural thing for people to be able to say, oh, you should talk to Jeff before you do anything. So I'd say that the biggest thing for solid foundational networking is getting as nichey as possible make sure that people know exactly what you want to do, who you want to
Mm.
talk to, and like, and the more specific you are, the more likely you're going to hit. The more general you are, the more likely you're going to have. Sure, you'll have some referrals, but it's probably going to be to work that you don't want, that you're not the most excited by. And I think that and it's just a byproduct of my industry that allowed me to be very nichey just because of the acronym. So I think that that's probably my biggest coaching, is that the more you network, the more specific you are, the more you're going to get the leads that you're looking for.
I love that. It all kind of comes down to, and this is something your business does really well, make it easy for the buyer. Make it easy
Right.
for them to understand what you do. Make it easy to understand the cost. Make it easy to understand the value.
Right.
Amazing.
And make your network make it easy for your network to understand where that fit is. So yeah, it's really just about cutting through a lot of the fluff at the end of the day. Because I think a lot of people, the biggest mistake they make when they go out in the business, they try to be everything to everybody because they need to find revenue. And, maybe after 6 months and stuff, you're going to start being really aware of the things that you want, the revenue that you want, and the clients that you can really impact that really juice you up. Because that's just as much of this, is that you want to see the impact that you're creating and know that you can fulfill it. And so then, you end up dialing back, I don't want this stuff, or you farm those things out and refer it to people that do get juiced up by the things that are ultimately withering you away.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. So pair PEO launches, we're in a high point. And then things change, as life does, as seasons come along. You became a daddy and your desired work-life balance changed. Say more.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm as enthusiastic of a daddy as you're ever going to talk to, and became a girl dad first, a boy dad second, and we are hoping that 2025 will be another addition to the family. So whenever,
That's a lot of fingers and toes.
yeah. Well, Mama Bear, again, like I tell her, if she's the CEO of the household, and she's the one that's owning the brunt of the responsibilities during the workday. I had to buy an office, because when my daughter started realizing that I was home, she wasn't going to let me work, and that was probably around the 18-month mark.
Mm.
And now it's like I have a clear separation, but I also have a very big itch to get home every day. So like I'm a 5 a.m. wake up, and in the office by 6:30 after I get a workout in. I stopped. I started doing afternoon workouts, and then I realized that driving by the gym when my daughter was a mile away from it, that my daughter won nine
Every
times out
time.
of 10. So I was never disciplined at all. So I had to just basically shift and say, I'm going to be a morning person, and then I can get home and be a present father from 4 o'clock on and through bedtime. And I'd say that that's been the biggest thing I've been challenged with through scaling, is trying to find a way to remain in operating in, like, leaving my work at work. Because as you scale, you end up inheriting other people's problems, and you want to solve them for them so they don't get frustrated and go through some sort of doubt about their employment with us. So I'd say that that's a thing I value the most. And when I started the company, I'd say it was largely around autonomy, and making sure I was recommending and doing things that I would do myself. And that's something that I've been able to maintain. But as you hire people, you have to sacrifice some autonomy to make sure that you're being a contributing factor towards their success, and not just trying to maintain the beautiful work-life balance that we've been able to achieve.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I think, particularly in your business, I imagine there are peaks around open enrollment or, parts of the year. And it is hard to find that work-life balance, especially on the cusp of success. Like, if I just do a little bit more here and a little bit more. And I love how you've like rethought about designing your life to make sure, if I go to the gym in the morning, I won't skip it, and I'll be home on time.
Yeah. And I'll be super productive once I get to the office. So it ends up helping out in many ways. But it took a long time for me to accept that I was going to be going to bed at 10 p.m. every night. And so I had the ability to get up at 5 and be able to commit to that piece of the pie. But it's been a super important piece to me. And again, it's just one of those things that as you kind of grow a company, you just don't know what you're sacrificing as you grow a company. So once you start it, like, it's all you, like, frankly, you know if you're creating a future mess for yourself. You know if there's a problem that you're basically causing, and you can decide to either uh, or you can decide to make that problem and know that you have to fix it in the future, or you can decide that you're just going to avoid those problems altogether and make sure that you don't have future fires that you're going to have to put out. And as you start bringing a team together, you got to figure out what can I let go of, because the clients aren't buying per PEO at that point. They're supporting Jeff Wanner. And the more I get removed from just being a producer in the company, the more I have to accept that I have to let my people extend our, mission, vision, values to our audience, and continue to be mindful of, are we creating a future problem or future mess, and being honest about whether or not a deal really makes sense for a client.
I love that. Thinking about like growth and scaling, which is the high point of your journey line. You do start thinking about, well, what can I give away? And now they're not buying from Jeff. They're buying from Pair PEO. They're buying from my sales reps or someone else. So really interesting to think about how that grows. And it sounds like you're scaling your culture really well. You're encouraging employee relationships outside of work. Say more.
Yeah. No, again, like I tell people all the time, and it also comes back down to even like when you're getting out of college and the career you pick, like you don't realize how important that decision really ends up being, as a 22, 23-year-old coming out of college. And let's say you get your first job offer comes in recruiting. You're going to be 35 and most likely still recruiting. Like you don't realize how much it's challenging to kind of reinvent yourself, even early stages of your career. And so I always like to, be able to be a sounding board for people that are at that stage, and just making sure that they understand that whenever you make these decisions, it's really not a 22-year-old decision. It's probably one that you need to envision yourself in perpetuity, or you need to envision what your business is going to be, was what I usually tell them. Figure out what your business is going to be, because that's going to be what's really going to juice you up. Where work's not going to feel like work anymore. It's going to feel like you're really building something for your future and your family's future. And a lot of times 22-year-olds aren't thinking about that. They're thinking about, beer money and doing the things that I was doing at 22. So they may not want
Moving
to
to
hear
Charlotte and swiping right on Tinder.
Yes, exactly. I don't even know if Tinder's around anymore. I'm sure it's been displaced by something much more sustainable. But yeah,
I
no,
hope so.
again, I feel like what I really get juiced up about is helping other people. Absent like this industry that we are, obviously this way that we make money and the way we create impact, I get way more intrinsic motivation out of supporting people like you that are making that first leap. It really does give me a lot of fulfillment to watch people take that first step. And then obviously our generation is abundantly more inclined to do that. And I think the generation behind us is more inclined to never get the W-2 addiction, which is even more rewarding, because that's the hardest thing to actually do, is go zero revenue for yourself and bet on yourself to build something and see it through, which is just it can be a long stumbling journey. And any kind of encouragement that those people can get can go a long way. And all it takes is just a little bit of thoughtful effort. So if I'm ever having a bad day, all I want to do is build up other people, because it just makes me feel better about, ultimately the impact I'm creating.
I feel similarly. I call myself a gratitude gremlin. Like I do nice things, and the unintended consequence is something nice happens for you, but like it makes me feel good. So my little gratitude gremlin likes to come out and do the same. You mentioned, and I'm going to nerd out on some HR stuff for a second.
Cool. Don't get over my head.
We've talked a lot about W-2 employees. I think we're seeing a large shift of folks going out on their own and doing their own sort of cobbling together employment or revenue or income. As a professional employer organization, do you think the laws maybe need to update about how we think about engaging with workers? Does it need to go beyond W-2 and contract? Should we open that up, or I don't know.
I think so. I think that at the end of the day, we're living in a system that's probably been built for
around
hundreds of years.
1938.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
And so yeah, again, like at the end of the day, like there's always a need for disruption. And obviously you're seeing a lot of this in the gig economy stuff that I feel like our generation, the generation after us, because it gives you built-in autonomy. I think a lot of people, young professionals, especially and new parents that are going down that journey, they're looking for autonomy as much as anything. And so I feel like there's definitely a way, and I've obviously toyed around this with my own company when I'm bringing people in and helping understand I'm kind of a weird employer because I often offer options. Like, here's the 3 different ways you could work with me. Do any of these seem interesting? Like, let them decide what's important to them and where they envision success and what's comfortable for them, because everyone's got different expense equations. Everyone's got different healthcare issues. Everyone's got different chapters of their life that they're turning. And it's foolish for me to think that I'm going to hit the bullseye. So I've kind of taken what I do in the PEO space and turned it more into how I envision scaling the company in a way that is meaningful to each person that joins the company.
Amazing. I love that idea of offering different types of engagements. I hope more people hear that, and I hope more people take that as an idea.
Yeah.
Jeff, that brings us to the end of your journey line. I'll ask you to predict the future now. Look into your crystal ball. What do you hope is next?
What do I hope is next? As a guy that consumes chaos abundantly, so I hope that my wife would agree with me. My son would not agree with me. I hope we have a healthy baby girl in summer of next year, so that I'm not trying to be a 3-kid dad in my selling season. Ideally, on the personal side, that's probably what I'm mostly hoping for. And ultimately, boy or girl, I don't really care at the end of the
Of
day.
course.
My little boy would certainly probably enjoy having a brother more. My energy would probably enjoy a nice little sweet girl. But anyway, we'll table that piece of the pie. What I see is that, more and more people are. I look at our industry, and the net promoter score for the industry when it's bought direct is atrocious, and it really emphasizes all the things I'm talking about: overselling, ignoring flaws in the proposals, and really emphasizing the wins that they want to show when it comes to a direct sales effort. I find that the broker channel should be multiplying, and it is multiplying in an aggressive way. And I'm very encouraged by that, because clients that get into this industry the right way and are coached through it, and not just the way that they go into the industry, but the way that that journey evolves over time. Because at the end of the day, companies may make sense for one PEO at 5 employees, and they may make sense for a different employee or PEO at 10 employees. It's really meant to be a long-term engagement between my company and our clients. And if other brokers share that, I really feel like the net promoter score of our industry should curve dramatically. And eventually, I think our whole industry will be bought through brokers, people that are helping people buy it, just like healthcare brokers do, just like P&C brokers do. Everything that touches PEOs outside of payroll, for the most part, is a brokered industry solution. So I don't see a reason why the PEO industry as a whole shouldn't be something that's completely concierge style, where they're helping people buy it instead of pushing a product down their throat and living off of a sales quota that generally is going to cause unethical behavior by salespeople that are trying to hit numbers that make them excited, but ultimately cause very bad experiences for the client on the back end. So if you want me to vision cast forward, I would expect that will happen over time. Now, it's all corporate employers, so it won't happen overnight, but I'd say hopefully in the next 10 years, at least 50% of people are buying PEOs through people like me that are really helping create a transparent outcome that they can buy into, and even with the warts, and knowing that on the front end, and walk into something that they know they're buying instead of being sold something that's got a fuzzy picture at best.
Yeah, it feels good to have somebody on our team on the HR and corporate side, especially dealing with brokers. Anything we missed? Anything else you want to shout out while we're here?
I don't think so. I mean, unless you have something you want to tee me up for, but no, I don't have anything else to lay on you at this point. Just again, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on here with you, and I appreciate to be your East Coast cheerleader as you've kind of gone along your journey, and really glad to see that you're still embarking on it, and hopefully I've been at least a small contributing force to your mindset, if nothing else.
For sure. I think it's you've been a great loud cheerleader, and you've also cheerleaded some of my side projects like fractional people. I'm really excited to have a friend of HR. And with that, that's all we've got. Jeff, thank you for sharing your journey line. If you're interested, check out the description below. Click the link. You can review his journey line, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.